Come take a seat. If you're in the back, come fill in these front rows for me. All right. We'll go ahead and start kicking things off. And if you, for any reason, need to get up and use the restroom down the hall, please feel free. I promise not to give you detention for wandering the halls. But welcome to our Inside Look panel on feeding kids. My name is Taylor Walters Chapman, and I'm the individual giving officer here at Feeding San Diego. But just a few years ago, I was an educator, like some of our panelists here today. So I'm really grateful to be moderating this panel about feeding kids programs and talking about what we can do to support our students. So let's go ahead and talk about our wonderful panelists. All right, today with us we have Sam Duke, who's our senior manager at Feeding San Diego. We have Aiden Gruby, who is an Eagle Scout and team leader at Feeding San Diego. Richard Gijon, who is the community schools coordinator at Hoover High School. And Dr. Brittany Daley, who is the principal of Hamilton Elementary School. Give them a warm welcome. Amazing. So today we are here to talk about feeding kids because it's just about summer vacation time. I know some of our schools are already there, but the students we serve really are going to be needing your support. About 50% of all students use free or reduced price meals. 50% of all students use those. And so what happens when summer comes around? So to get us started today, because I do want this to end up being a conversation, I've got a little game for us to get into. So you can get your smartphones out. We're going to play a Kahoot, which is all the rage in school these days. Yep, you can start it. All right, so pay attention, and I hope you brought your school spirit, because I will be selecting a valedictorian at the end of our program. Yep, classic mode. All right, so you'll see a QR code in a moment, or if you are streaming with us, go to kahoot.it, and our game pen is right there. Give yourself a little nickname. Our panelists are also going to be participating, so if you beat out our panelists, you get an extra point, an extra sash with your valedictorian robe. These questions are all going to be about hunger, and specifically hunger for our students. Okay, yes. All right, let's get it started. I know, it's okay, it's our first question. It's gonna be an easy one. It's okay, it's pretty easy. So, how much do you know about child hunger in San Diego? True or false? Child hunger is about the physical sensation of not having enough to eat. True or false? Okay, that is false. Child hunger is not just about the physical sensation, it's also about the mindset that it puts our students into, right? That scarcity mindset. It changes a lot for our kids, and it's not about just being hungry, it's about them being tired, it's about their behavioral problems, it's about the health issues that they have later in life. But let's see who's Aiden on the panel. I've heard that he's a shark, guys. Okay, so just to give you a little insight though, there are 330,000 people facing food insecurity in San Diego every day, and that is a conservative estimate. So bearing that in mind, your question is, how many students use free or reduced price meals at school in San Diego? You already know it's 50% of the total students. But how many?
240,000.
Word. Okay, yeah, do you want to scooch a little? There you go, yeah, take up the front row. All right, so it is 240,000. It's 240,000, which tells us that maybe that 330,000 was really conservative, right, to guess at how many people are food insecure. So that's how many kids in San Diego are using free or reduced price. Still heading up the front is Aiden. So let's talk about the Universal Meal Program. This was instituted during COVID-19. Okay, federally, all of the states got this, so that meant that all students got free meals during COVID-19, but as we know, pandemic funding has come to an end. You've probably gotten a lot of emails from me about exactly that. So my question for you is, going forward, how many states have voted to provide universal meals at school? It's 9 schools, and guess what, everybody? Oh, KP moving up the board. Guess what? California was the very first to implement voting in universal school meals. So way to go. I'm so proud to live in California because we were the first ones to get that going. However, let's think about it some more. How many students are actually eligible for these meals on average? Sometimes we say universal, sometimes we say anybody come through. How many people on average, what % of these students are actually eligible for these universal meals? It's 100%. Universal actually means universal in this case. So that is really great, and for most schools that includes a breakfast and a lunch. Oh, Gruby's coming in. Okay, with these universal meals, is it true or false? Can these students take those meals home? That is false. That was really split, you guys. You guys were really split on that one. But no, you can't take it home. I'm sure the government thinks that we would be abusing the system if we let them do that. Gruby's up top. So this is where we can help. Feeding San Diego, our programs like School Pantry and backpack programs are the ones that are going to supplement this program. So backpack program, every Friday, sometimes Thursdays, kids can take home a backpack full of food to supplement their weekend. And then School Pantries, that's to help the whole overall cupboard at home, right? So you're gonna get a lot of good staples there. That's more for than just the kid. That's gonna help feed the whole family. All right, true or false? Kids facing hunger are twice as likely to repeat a grade. Could it really be twice as likely? Or is it more? Is it 3 times as likely? Have I been cruel to you all? It's true. So everyone got that one right. Everyone just give yourself a little pat, because everyone who just did that got that correct. It's true. They are twice as likely to repeat a grade. And we're going to find out why in just a moment here. KP, I think you can still sneak up on the Grubies. When a child misses breakfast, they are significantly more likely to fall asleep in class, undereat at lunch, miss school, or run away from home. This is just missing breakfast. This is not about dinner last night. This is not about lunch. This is missing school. So they might be falling asleep in class, but I don't have the data on that, okay? I only have the data about kids missing school. So bring me the studies and I'll include it in my next Kahoot.
What if I have first-hand knowledge of my
I'm gonna need a sample size of 1,200 different school districts. All right, so to talk a little bit more about our programs here, I've just got 2 more questions for you, and then we'll get into our panel. But Feeding San Diego provided 35 million meals last year. That's not just through our Feeding Kids programs, that's across the entire county through all of our programs. Remember this number, 35 million. It will come up later, valedictorian, okay? So when we're talking about our programs, true or false, students must qualify to use School Pantry or backpack program. Wow, everyone really made a decisive choice on that right away. Okay, I'll skip our timer. False, they don't have to qualify. And that's something that we make sure that we talk about with all of our partners, is that we're not asking people to prove that they are hungry. You get in line, we're giving you food. That's the bottom line, right? Okay, that was a quick one, which brings us to our last question, true or false. There isn't enough fresh produce to supply our programs according to USDA guidelines of youth meals. True or false? Youth meals, we got to keep you healthy. However, we have another split audience on this one. It is false. This is something I say all the time, no matter what I'm speaking on. We have enough food. There is enough food to feed everybody who needs it. And it's just a matter of, can we get it to them? And that's where I'm hoping everyone who hears this is going to be moved to do. So thank you so much for playing. Let's see who is taking our podiums. Third place is the Grubies. Coming in second, Richie Rich. I didn't even call you out, Richie Rich. And first place, our panelist, Aiden Gruby. Come on back, take your seat. All right. Yep. Okay. I hope you guys all got a little something out of that Kahoot. I think it's a really great way to just kind of refresh our knowledge so that this way we can have like a meaningful conversation without being worried about facts, right? So something I just want to remind ourselves of at the top of this, and this is where my valedictorian can, maybe Aiden, you can step up, or somebody else in the audience can tell me, but 80,000 kids in San Diego don't know where their next meal is coming from. So 80,000 kids are food insecure. That's a conservative estimate. We know that 250,000 are getting those free and reduced price meals, right? But we have 80,000 kids. You might want a calculator. 80,000 kids times 3 meals a day times 365 days a year. How many meals do they need? Yes, 87.6 million meals are needed for just the food insecure kids in San Diego. How many meals does Feeding San Diego give a year? 35. 35, yes, gold stars, gold stars, gold stars. That's correct. So what I'm telling you guys is we could throw all of our resources tomorrow and say, okay, we're just going to focus on feeding kids. The kids deserve it. They need it the most. They're the future. We would still only be giving them 1 meal a day, right, for the year. So we really need to be putting more resources. We have everything we need. We just need to get it to them with your help. So with that in mind, we're going to get moving here. Just as a quick reminder, you might hear some things talked about today from Feeding San Diego, our school pantry. That's what Richard is going to be our big expert in, right? And as well as Dr. Brittany Daley, our backpack program. That's usually just on Thursdays and Fridays, right? The school pantry is more of like, it happens, twice a month, but it might also be kind of a permanent integration into the school. And then the summer food service program, that's what we really need to get funded today, because summer is here. The kids are not able to go grab those lunches that they're getting for free and reduced price. We want to make sure that they're fed so that they can come back to school healthy and happy. Okay, so my first question is for my school pantry reps. I'm just going to ask you to tell me a little bit about your student body. What does your student look like? If there was a snapshot of the Hoover hero, right? And the Hoover Cardinal and the Hamilton hero, they're both H's. then what would they be like?
Hey everybody, thank you so much for having us. So at our school we have about 500 students, 27 different languages are spoken. So it's really hard to paint a snapshot of just one student. Over 80% will be the first in their family to go to college when they do go. So these are many families immigrated here and are making a new life here for themselves. Also, 99.8% of Hamilton qualifies for free and reduced lunch. So there's 0.2, which is a couple kiddos that don't. But when you're thinking of those universal meals, that's my entire school. So you're thinking an entire school that is dealing with food insecurity, yet being asked to achieve while their families are being asked to work multiple jobs to compensate for that. And so that's a little bit of our heroes. They love YouTube. They want to be video game designers when they grow up. They learned how to code this year from Google. They're very curious kiddos. They love art. And the most important thing about them, they're really kind, and they do believe in a better world. And later you'll get to hear a little bit about how Feeding San Diego helped them imagine that. So that's a little bit about the Hamilton heroes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Richard, working at the best high school. I'm sorry. I know you love Kearney, but I have to throw Hoover as the best high school in San Diego County, serving 2,200 students. 36 languages are spoken at Hoover High School. Fun fact about our two schools, we serve the same cluster, so our elementary students will eventually end up at Hoover. So it's nice to see that Feeding San Diego is not just supporting individual schools, but whole communities at the same time. What can I say about our kids? They're remarkable, amazing, but similar to Hamilton, you have working class families working multiple jobs to support families. Being that we're at the high school level, you have high school students skipping school to get jobs to provide for families. I think that's a big issue at our school. But you also see a very resilient community that's looking forward and dreaming big. And the only reason we dream big is that we have these supports that can come in and support them. Everyone at Hoover qualifies for free and reduced lunch. We are a community provision school, which means that everyone at that school gets free and reduced lunches. That's availability for breakfast, a snack for nutrition break, and lunch. So it's a lot of food that's coming in through our school. But same, curious, kind, respectful, and definitely one of the most amazing high school in the City Heights area, I'll say that. Thank you.
Thanks. I got to use the mic so the streamers can hear me. So I would also love to hear from both of you. If you can tell me a bit about what does it look like when your students are facing food insecurity and don't have reliable access to fresh food? How do you identify it and so forth?
I think the number one thing that we see is attendance. If our kids are hungry, they're not coming to school. How many of us here have been hungry in a meeting or at work or somewhere else, and it's easy for us to focus in that moment? It's not, right? It's impossible. Now we're asking a teenager who's also going through a lot of body changes, who's going through a lot of hormonal changes, who's going through a lot of different changes in life, plus the pressure of what's going on at home, plus everything that's going on in the world, our COVID children, and then they have to come to school, and we demand that they achieve and succeed at a high level. You can't learn if you're hungry. And that's what happens with our kids. Either it's they don't come to school because they're too hungry to come, or they don't come to school because they're working to provide basic needs for their families. Or if they are in school, it's the students who are acting out in class, not because they want to act out, it's because their bodies are reacting to the fact that they're hungry and they can't concentrate in class. It disrupts so much more. And it not only disrupts them, but also disrupts their fellow peers. When there's a disruption in class, it's not just the student that is having that emergency, it's everyone in that class is now kind of paying that consequence of being food insecure. So that's just a little snapshot of our Hoover Cardinals in that respect.
Thank you. It is very similar. They're just a little bit younger at my school, but it is Another burden is as young as first and second grade, they're worrying about their siblings who haven't eaten food either. And so in addition to worrying about their own hunger, they're sitting in class trying to think of where they're going to get their siblings' next meal. How can they save breakfast in their backpack so that they can feed their siblings dinner or a snack or breakfast the next day? And then specifically for the little ones, one of our school values is advocacy, and schools are systems of power, and sometimes people don't always feel safe advocating for what they need in systems of power, but it's hard for them to let you know that what they need is food, because they're kind of learning what hunger feels like, sadly, and it might be a feeling they've sat with often, but it often is expressed as anger or falling asleep, or we have kids who are throwing things, and then when they feel safe enough to tell you what the root is, hey, they had 2 cups of rice that they split amongst 9 people, and they only got a little bit. Or they had to choose between giving their cereal bars to their siblings or themselves. So it is worry. And I think of the goal is for our kids to thrive, not just survive. So not being hungry is survival, but thriving looks like fully participating and collaborating and innovating and sharing. And so I think that's the goal, right? And you can't even have a little bit of worry if you want to thrive. It's really hard to thrive under, traumatic circumstances. So that's something that we have 4-year-olds worrying about their baby siblings all the way to 5th graders at my school. And a lot of our families work graveyard shifts, so students are in charge of even preparing food for the families when they come home. So it's kind of a cycle of worry, and I know families are worried too. And so we see a lot of the similar behaviors that Richard sees at our school.
Thank you both. That's really what we're talking about when I say that it's not just a sensation physically, right? It's the worry, it's the time, it's the years and years and years of not putting yourself first, right? So we're going to actually transition smoothly into our adverse child experiences, or ACEs. If you're an educator, you're probably really familiar with these, right? These are really common. 61% of adults surveyed across 25 states said that they had at least one type of ACE happen or occur, and 1 in 6 has had 4 or more. So these things are not just special little one-off things that we should maybe prepare for just in case. These are things that a big part of our population, a big part of our students are experiencing. And preventing them could potentially reduce health conditions, right? For example, 1.9 million heart disease cases and 21 million depression cases could have been potentially avoided. But they're really costly too. So a 10% reduction in these, just 10%, right, could equate to an annual savings in North America of $56 billion. That means we're putting $56 billion of resources, hospital visits, doctors, chronic illness. If you have chronic illness, you know how many doctor's visits you go to, right? That's a big thing that can come from these ACEs, is just to be continuously sick, and it's hard to get better, right, if you're not eating, especially. But I also want to point out that some children are at a much greater risk for ACEs than others. We know that in our community that people of color are going to be much more likely to be experiencing hunger than others. Similar with ACEs, that same issue is very prevalent. Women, especially too, and several different racial or ethnic minority groups are at much greater risk for experiencing 4 or more types of ACEs just in their childhood alone. So I bring these up because they are part of that sort of systemic issue where hunger is not the only issue, but it is indicative of many others, and really the harm that can come, right? So we want to talk about a little bit how we can be helping. So I would love to hear what does it mean to, when you're experiencing these adverse conditions as a child. We heard a little bit about what it means for them now. What can it mean for them later in life?
Thank you so much. So a sad reality is that young people these days, again, I have 4-year-olds all the way to 5th grade, especially after COVID, numbers of students experiencing depression, anxiety has skyrocketed. We have localized school police that support us, and they've said the number one call they're getting daily basis, 13, 14 people wanting to end their life. And when I talk with the kids from my own school that have gone through that, why now? What made you feel this way? Being at home from COVID, being separated, also COVID for a lot of our kids kind of highlighted the harshness of the world and their reality. That is very depressing. And these beautiful children that have so much hope, they're kind of losing that because they're experiencing hunger. Their families were the essential workers that were getting COVID first and 5 times and 6 times and continue to get COVID. So mental health has been one of the number one things that I've noticed for the adults and the children. And when I talk with the adults caring for these young people that are experiencing mental illness, one of the things that's causing them the most depression is them feeling like they work so hard, yet no matter how hard they work, they can't provide for basic needs like food. So when we get to the food pantry has been something that's helped people's mental health, given them hope as well as helped their stomachs. But it is something that I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced depressive moments, but sometimes when people are unable to care for those around them, it feels like neglect to little ones because they don't understand what the adults around them are feeling. And so the amount of people requesting mental health services, both little ones as young as 4, asking to talk to therapists about why the world doesn't care about them and their families, has been significantly large. And I know it's not up there, but also the amount of people that are doubling up in homes and experiencing modern homelessness, especially in our 2 communities. We'll have 15, 16 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment paying between $2,000 and $3,000. And so I can't imagine living with that many people in one space, but that creates a very chaotic environment, and it's very hard to provide no matter how hard you work. So some of these things feel unavoidable for families to prevent for their children, which causes a lot of heartache.
At the high school level, sometimes it's a little overwhelming when you come into a system and you've been experiencing these stressors for years. And you get to the high school level and you're hoping that you can right that ship. But once you've been set in these patterns for so many years, it's almost impossible to make that change. A lot of research has been coming out on toxic stress. And we talk about it in adults, but the reality is a lot of our children are experiencing that toxic stress not from a lack of the parents trying or the communities wanting to support them. It's just the resources are not being made available. You go into City Heights and you walk around our community and you realize that there isn't a lot of options for healthy food. There's a McDonald's, there's a Jack in the Box, there's like 50 million taco shops, there's all this stuff that's easy and accessible, but there's one grocery store right dab in the middle that's supposed to support the entire community. And sometimes the prices are a little out of reach for a lot of our families. So you're talking about all that history coming into the high school level, and many of us have heard it from the school to prison pipeline. Hunger is a huge indicator of that pipeline because it starts with behaviors. How many of our freshman students, middle school students are caught stealing from convenience stores, and they're not stealing because they want to steal, they're stealing because they're hungry. And you're starting to see that now at this level. In high school, you're trying to change, but there's this perception that, we live in the so-and-so ghetto, and no one cares about us, and there's separation where you're here and I'm over here, and I have to manage and I have to find a way to survive. That toxic stress level just kicks in another notch. Brittany talked about those younger siblings who are worried about their baby siblings. Think about a high school student who's worried about their middle school siblings, their elementary siblings, their cousins who live in the same household, their parents. We keep talking about that COVID is over. COVID is not over, friends, especially for our communities and the BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous people of color. COVID is still a really real thing. Why? Because we have hundreds of people who are sick and still recovering from long COVID, who can't work, who can't support their families. And who sees this? The children. And what do? And talking to some of my students, I tell my mom I'm not hungry, so my sibling can eat. Or I don't take that extra breakfast bar so somebody else can eat. or I don't eat that last bit of whatever's left over in the pot because my mother won't eat until everybody else eats something, or I'll pretend like I'm eating so my mom doesn't worry. What kind of stress does that bring? You know, it stresses me out just hearing, but just hearing our students go through that, that is the reality that they're going through right now.
Thank you so much. It's really moving to hear about your students, and I'm going to ask you a little bit more, and then I promise we're going to come to this side of our panel. I just would love to hear you both share about the programs that you do work with Feeding San Diego on. How long have those programs been implemented at your locations? And yeah, talk a little bit about what it does for your students.
We started with the School Pantry program back in January. And this was a response, one, to a teacher at our school who was really passionate about bringing a food pantry to our school, Ms. Lonecker. She had this vision, this dream to provide this as, not as a handout, but as a health initiative. You don't have healthy food, you can't be healthy. And that was her desire, her dream. And she really tried to do this. At the same time, I was looking at data, looking at our most chronically absent students and asking the question, hey, I noticed you haven't been at school, what's going on? 47 out of the 50 students, Mr. Richard, I work a job either under the table or a side job so I can bring resources home. Ms. Lonecker had this vision for health. The data supported it. We came together. In a very short amount of time, we were able to launch the pantry, which we have then rebranded the Hoover Market. This is not something that's full of stigma. This is something that's been normalized. Coming to the market is as normal as coming to school. And everything that's there is for you. The market is student-ran, student managers, student stockers. They bring it in, they stock the shelves, they distribute to the community. The students have owned it. And not only are they owning it, but our classroom teachers have embraced it as well. We have a teacher on campus, Chef Lou, who's actually creating recipes from some of the items that have come in. Raise your hand if you know what a winter squash is. I had no clue what a winter squash was until we received it in the delivery, but she was able to show students how to cook it, pass it out to the school, and the students come to the market to get those items. This is about empowering students. This is about giving them back power. You know, in the system where they're powerless for such a long time, to be able to go and grab something off a shelf and take it home to provide, boosts their self-esteem, gives them a sense of power. They know they're making a difference. And that's something that has been amazing. Our attendance around the whole district has been atrocious these last couple of years coming out of COVID. But the funny thing is, you look at Hoover's attendance, horrible. Tuesday distribution day, a drop in chronic attendance. You have more kids coming. Why? Because they want to come. They're coming for the pantry. And then the next day, it goes back kind of to where it was. We're trying to figure out how we can do that every single day. But it's amazing to see students own this, the community own it. Since January, I think as of this morning, more than 42,000 pounds of food, serving 24,000 households. That's what we have done collectively. And that to me is something that should be celebrated, highlighted, and I'm just so excited to continue that work.
Whew. It makes me really grateful because we have different days. So sometimes people will go from like my school to Richard's school so that they can kind of have that food supply. So it's really cool to sit next to you, and thank you for sharing. So Feeding San Diego has been partnering with Hamilton for almost 10 years. And so they've become an integral part of our DNA and who we are as a school. They persisted throughout all of COVID. So even when we weren't able to give classes, we were giving food. And so they kind of became our lifeline moments with families. How are you? Do you still live here? Are you okay? We haven't seen you. And so we kind of resurged our love for Feeding San Diego and the School Pantry program during COVID. I've been a part of it for 3 years. This is my 3rd year at the school. And so at our school, it looks a little bit different than Richard's school because, 4-year-olds can't quite lift those yams by themselves yet. But our families have completely taken over the program. And so they do organize it. And it's not just families that attend my school. It's Doña Maria that lives across the street that's been coming for 10 years, that has no children at my school, but is now the babysitter of every child at my school. She has relationships. So we really are more actually than just a school pantry. We're a community community pantry, and people know that you need something, we're a safe place for you to come. And all those lifelines came from our school pantry program. But families come, and there is about 18 regular volunteers, but it gets up to 30, and they are best friends. They come and they organize all the tables and all the food. And then one of the best things is, again, we have so many different languages and cultures. So as they see things come in, they'll kind of share little recipes. So, food's a very big deal. And if you don't know what you're eating, you might not take it. But someone will maybe not want those yams. And they'll be like, hey, I know that you could make, Jamaican jerk chicken wraps with that. So they share all these recipes, and people try food that they've never tried before. And one of my favorite moments was Count Chocula. Did anyone see that cereal around Halloween? When you have that, thematic holiday food, it's always a little bit more expensive and feels not accessible. So when that arrived, my school was so excited. And we have our morning circle where it's like, how are you feeling? What was the best part of your day? And this one little third grader is like, I am feeling too blessed to be stressed. I'm like, that's awesome. Why are you feeling too blessed to be stressed? I finally got to have Count Chocula. And so I think we're getting awesome produce that maybe you wouldn't experience otherwise, but we're also getting these items like ice waters or RX bars or Count Chocula that you're seeing in the stores that you have this desire to try so bad and you never get to try. So it's also kind of having that come alive for our kids. And then around December, the kids are like, I think we can be in charge. So then they start packaging the food and passing it out and coming up with their own creative recipes. And again, to kind of build the community of support, Hamilton had its first year of having cooking classes. They can cook better than I can, and they teaching them, healthy food is for you. You can enjoy this. This is for you. This is something that nourishes your body and your spirit and your mind. And so it's been really great to see them do that. And my favorite, her name's Juliet. Her daughter is now a parent of two kiddos at my school. Her mom went to our school. The grandma's been there she's been delivering lumpia to our school since the 80s. She brings her car, and she has a map of all the people in our area that are too elderly to drive or too sick to drive. And so she actually gets the boxes and the produce in her little car, and she drives and drops it off every Wednesday. And so it's more than just helping a school, because we know that when a community does well, its children do well. And so I'm really grateful because Feeding San Diego has given our school for 10 years, and hopefully many more to come, the liberty to love communities so that our kids can see thriving people around them and see that we all care about meeting their needs. And so it's been a really big blessing for our whole community. So thank you very much.
Community. So wonderful to hear those stories. And 10 years. Sam, how many years has Feeding San Diego been doing this work?
Well, we've been around for 16 years.
Yes. So we got on the ground floor with you guys. So it's just nice to have somebody who's really been with us that long, too, to really be having these good experiences. All right, Aiden, it's your shining moment. So if you don't know, Aiden is a uniquely driven young man. He became an Eagle Scout at 14. He became a team lead for our volunteer department at age 10. And he's here today to talk about his experience with Feeding San Diego, but also to give us a little youth perspective. So when you're thinking for our Q&A later, he might be somebody interesting to ask some questions of, right? So Aiden, can you just give us an idea of what initially inspired you to join us at Feeding San Diego, and why did you stay?
So I started when I was 6 years old. I came to an open house with my parents, and I enjoyed volunteering. I felt like it was a chance to give back to the community. And so eventually, a few years later, I guess maybe a year later, we started coming every other week. I think we started first at like once a month, then every other week, and then every week when I could. And eventually, I started dragging my parents to come because I really wanted to volunteer, and I felt like it was something that I could do to give back to the community.
And do you see a lot of your peers similarly doing this work? Obviously, with the Eagle Scouts, that's really a service-driven organization, but at school, across in your community, where do you think you stand in terms of people who are giving back?
So especially at school, I don't think that my peers know about the volunteer opportunities, and I don't think they're actively seeking out those opportunities to volunteer in the community. Through Scouts, well, one of the requirements is to volunteer, and I feel like for some Scouts it's just a requirement to check off, unfortunately. And for others, it's really, they jump at the chance to actually give back to the community, and they keep on coming back over and over again. But I've seen, like I said, that there are, especially like in school and in Scouts, there are people, one, they don't know about the opportunities to volunteer, and two, they just check it off as a requirement. They don't keep on coming back.
And what would you say, what don't your peers know about volunteering that you can share about it?
I think my peers don't know how much you're impacting the community. There is such an impact from even a 2-hour shift at Feeding San Diego. Or just in general, you're helping your community, and you're helping to make your community a better place.
And my last question before I squeeze the spotlight off of you is, can you think of a time when you may have interacted with a food insecure person that has been particularly meaningful for you?
I do think when I volunteered with Feeding San Diego through the Together tours, where we distribute food out into the community. Families come in their cars, and we give them fresh produce, meat, and I think some canned goods. I was doing check-in this one time, and even though I only got to interact with these families for like a minute at max, everyone had their different stories, and everyone was so grateful to be receiving the food that Feeding San Diego gave.
Thank you, Aiden. Yeah, it's really great to be able to have those opportunities to really interface with the people you're helping, since a lot of the shifts that we do here is more packaging food. I really encourage anyone who hasn't had a chance to really volunteer for our produce pantries, especially, is a great opportunity to interface with a very smaller community. It can be your zip code. You just have to go to our website and see Find Food Near Me, and you can volunteer at any of those sites really to kind of find the people who are probably, not too far from where you lay your head at night. So thank you again for sharing that, Aiden. All right, Sam Duke, our incredible senior manager. Can you tell us a little bit about the Feeding Kids initiative? What are the programs that you oversee that really impact our students? And how has that been for you?
Good evening, everyone. So I oversee our School Pantry program as well as our backpack program alongside a team of 4 amazing team members. We also support the Summer Food Service program, which is our federally funded program for kids during the summer who aren't receiving school meals. We partner with those at libraries and resource centers all over San Diego County. But as far as summer programming going, we have great partners like Hoover and Hamilton who continue their school pantries through the summer so that kids still have access to those pantry items even though school isn't in session. Currently, we partner with about 47 school pantries and 4 backpack sites that host bi-weekly distributions July through August. And then it does taper down a little bit during the summer, but we try to keep as many programs going through the summer so kids and families have access to nutritious food when they don't receive it regularly during school. So yeah.
And how have the programs that you've overseen really changed in your time here? Or I guess even like before your time coming into how things are run now?
Well, I've been with Feeding San Diego for about 10 years, and when I started, we didn't even have a school pantry program, so that is one of the biggest changes. And of course, we've scaled as we've grown as an organization. I think last year, according to the paper, we had 35 schools. As I mentioned, we're at 47, so we are trying to grow each year. We do things a lot more strategically now, meaning we are really looking at the schools in need. We're looking at what other resources are in their area. We're collaborating with the San Diego Food Bank to make sure we're not overlapping our services too closely, so that way we can use our limited resources in a really meaningful, powerful way.
Yeah, you've been with us 10 years. That's incredible. Can you think of a time where you have interfaced with a volunteer or a person in need that's been meaningful for you? I'm sure there's countless, right?
Just going to echo what Aiden said. Our Together Tours was just a really great way to interact with those directly in need and hearing their stories. But just working with our programs, I get to interact with our great schools, the families at our schools, at our produce pantries, and just see the very different groups of people that are struggling with hunger and how we as an organization and our amazing partners and volunteers are doing our part to make a difference.
Thank you. My last real question for you is, how are we at Feeding San Diego moving towards helping more kids, more communities, and what can the people in this room or streaming the panel do to help?
That's a tough question. Well, I'll start with an easy one, obviously volunteering. I oversee that department as well, so just giving your time to help make it possible to get the food out to people in need, raising awareness for what we're doing here and the many programs that we support, definitely raising awareness for kids. Also, donating funds. We can't do what we do without the funds to fund the programs, and that's how we grow based off of some of the funding we receive. Beyond that, it's just getting involved, asking questions, learning how you can make an impact either remotely or like in our distribution center or at our pantries out in the community are some of the biggest ways you can make an impact.
Amazing, thank you. And I'd love to just echo that question to the rest of our panelists. How can the people in this room or at home support you in what you do and therefore serve our community even more? Aiden?
I would like to just reiterate what Sam said. Volunteer. There are so many different volunteer opportunities here at Feeding San Diego, and each one of them will make a difference in the community. I think that is one of the best ways to support what Feeding San Diego does and to just get back and volunteer in the community. Oops, it's back there a little bit.
Sorry. I like to say, give your time, give your talent, and give your treasure to support our students. Well, I speak for students, that's who I represent. And I want to say that when I say time, talent, and treasure, I think of one student in particular this year who grew up in a single-parent household, 17 years old, senior year in high school. And those of us who remember our senior year, remember, what were we doing? We were dreaming about the next year. We were dreaming about college. We were dreaming about all these other things. We were looking forward to our future. This student was doing the same thing until she lost her mother right at the beginning of the school year. So single mom, so now she is by herself. And the student comes into my office in tears and shares what's going on. I'm gonna have to drop out. I'm gonna have to work. I'm gonna have to start supporting myself. And when the pantry came to Hoover, we were able to supplement that. Don't go to work, stay in school, finish what you need to do. Other people gave their time, other people gave their talents, and the people in here who gave their treasure, thank you. Because you allowed this student to graduate last week. She made it. This student made it. But it wouldn't have been possible without your time, without your talent, and without your treasure. So on behalf of that student, I just thank you. Thank you.
I just want to echo the treasure. A lot of us have gone to the grocery store recently, and we've maybe noticed that our money does not go as far as it used to. And so I am so grateful for everything that we've gotten, but there are days where maybe families are getting, one Powerade, and the average household at Hamilton is 7 to 8 people. That's about our average. So imagine if you're a household of 7 to 8 and you're getting one Powerade. You are grateful that you have it, but you're still kind of in that mental space of deciding who's going to get it or how much are they going to get. So it might not go as far tangibly as it used to a few years ago, but emotionally it goes really far right now, and we do need donations more than ever to make that care materialize for kids. And then I think just I don't know where everyone lives, but I know food insecurity, if it's not something you've ever experienced or if it's not something that you see every day, it's very easy to forget. And so take a drive to a neighborhood. You're welcome to come to my school, come to Hoover, we'll welcome you, and look around at how many homes versus apartments there are, and watch how many people come out of apartments, and learn the stories, and look at the jobs that they're going, or learn about the people around you, because behind every donation is a family, is a story, is a history, is a need, is a heart. And so I just think your treasure and your donation makes a huge difference, and we need it now more than ever. Your heart and listening so that you can be a champion in whatever spaces you leave here and go into is really important. And then just, keep showing those volunteers. I was going to try and find the picture on my phone, but over December, Feeding San Diego helped us do a holiday distribution, and they've done that over the winter break and Thanksgiving break, where people actually got access to chicken drumsticks and ground turkey. That was their holiday meal. And Christmas Eve, I got a picture on my class dojo, which is like school Instagram. And one of the families said, hey, Feeding San Diego gives so much back to us, and now it's our time to give. And they actually took their whole family and volunteered. I don't know where they volunteered. So just know, while you give people's needs, you're also teaching them to be the type of people that give to other people's needs when they grow up. And our community really does notice. So thank you for that as well, for not just meeting the need, but giving them the dream to meet other people's needs as they grow up. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you all. Yeah, I can stand in front of the speaker. Okay, so I just want to thank one more time. No, I can't. I'm marrying a sound guy, so this is really embarrassing for me. I want to say one more time, thank you so much to our panelists for your time. It has been really meaningful, I think, not just for me, but for everyone who is in this room and everyone who's watching it, everyone who will watch it, because we will post it online. It has been a really great conversation, and I've really loved hearing your stories. So one more time before we move into the Q&A, I want to say thank you to Sam Duke, our senior manager, Aiden Gruby, student and team lead, Richard Gijon, our community schools coordinator, and Dr. Brittany Daley, the principal of Hamilton Elementary. We so appreciate you. So if you're streaming online, now is a good time to pop in with some questions. Otherwise, if you have any questions for the people who are in the room, what would be really great so that we can capture it would be for you to use this microphone. There's a little tape X over there if you are interested in coming up and asking any questions of our panelists before we wrap things up. Come on forward. Yep. All right, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, what is the footprint of your school district? You mentioned City Heights, but I'm not familiar enough with the school names, and I was intrigued by some of the stories you told, as well as the 27 languages, so that would be of very interest to me because I'm geographically oriented. Thank you.
Sandia Unified, forget we need the mic, thank you. Sandia Unified serves as far south as the border with National City, border with Spring Valley, and as far north as Scripps Ranch and La Jolla. So that is kind of the geographic. Our region where we serve, the City Heights or the Hoover cluster, we divide our district by cluster, so all the elementary schools and all the middle schools that feed into the high school, that is one cluster. Our cluster is probably the smallest in terms of geographic space, but the most densely populated. So we serve roughly, what, I would say like a 2 square mile radius is about of City Heights. So zip codes 92105 and 92115. The western portion of 92115 is what we serve in the Hoover cluster.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, did you want to add to that, Brittany?
Well, also, it's interesting to look up City Heights. We've done some research, and nationally, we're known for being one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the whole nation. And so, and that has only, I would say, increased. We've gotten a lot of families that are from Ukraine moving into City Heights, and also, it's just really changing, which is awesome. Like when you invest in City Heights, you really invest in every type of culture and every type of family. And so we are a small footprint, but we make up a lot of the population. And just the average income at my school is $22,000. And so imagine that the average family size is 7 to 8 members, but the average income is $21,000 to $22,000. I don't know.
Average rent's about $2,000.
That was me that time. It wasn't you. So good job.
So $22,000, same thing as Hoover. Average rent is $2,000. Multiply rent by 12 months, $24,000. You're already in a $2,000 deficit. So that's why you have so many people doubling up together. It's like one family pays rent and the other family pays everything else.
Amazing. And for anybody else who might be geographically minded, as Dennis said, Feeding San Diego serves about, our service area is roughly the size of New Jersey. So we are serving quite a large just area space throughout the county. All right, I see another question coming.
Hello, I'm also an educator, so this is really fun for me to listen to your experiences, yours as well as a student, former student, now running programs that help students. My question was, how have you seen, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but the pantries and all of that, how have you seen that affect students, both, you know, their mentalities, even within the classroom, but I know you kind of spoke about how they're helping. How have you seen these benefits actually improve student experiences without your school? If you have other experiences, Aiden, you can tell about your friends and things like that. Sam, your experiences as well. I want to hear from everybody.
Thank you. I think that when you see that a community wants to meet you in your need and that it's a safe place to share that, you begin to advocate for what other things you might need. And so I think that's a very tangible and visible way that students have been changed by our school pantry. It's not just about the hunger and not feeling the hunger, but it's about knowing I can let my community know what I need, and they're there to stand in the gaps with me. And so that's looked like people asking, can you help me get mental health counseling? Can you help me get a dentist service? Can you help me get an eye clinic? We've done so many free dental clinics on our campus. We've done so many eye clinics. We had very low family volunteers, and they said, hey, can I let you know that we don't know where to get a TB test? We did a TB test. We have 157 registered volunteers now, and last year we had 2. So I think Feeding San Diego was our first lifeline that helped us create this community where it's safe to say what you need, and that people around you, whether it's people that work in the school or amazing partners like you all, like will do what it takes to meet you there. And so the advocacy, and that's translated to learning. Our reading scores were at 9% proficient, at or above proficient when I got there, and we're at 52.7. And so, and I'm still not happy, but that's better. Okay, we'll clap. That's a tremendous increase in 2 years, especially given that it was COVID. Why? Because students are letting us know what they need. I need you to teach me how to do this. You're telling me to do this. That's not what I need to learn. I need you to teach me this. And so I think seeing 4-year-olds feel safe enough to advocate what they need, that's a game changer for their life trajectory and honestly for our world, because we need people of all lives and spaces to advocate for what they see, because we all can't see the same thing. So Feeding San Diego was our first thing that helped us launch that safety in our community.
Everything she just said, I concur. What I would add is not only advocating for themselves, but the fact that we were able to say, what do you need? And we were able to meet a promise. We were able to meet the need. How many times have government institutions asked, what do you need? And they listen for like 10, 15 years, and then when it comes time for action, crickets. Unfortunately, that's been the education system for many years, unfortunately, and that's the change that's happening now. As my work in community schools is that the school is becoming the center for life. Instead of sending you out here and going there and going over here, come to the school will have what you need. So being able to say, I hear that you need a dental clinic, that you're hungry, that you're food insecure, that this is going on, I can provide a resource. I can provide a support. And honestly, Feeding San Diego has been that first organization that came along in my journey as community schools coordinator, and I was able to keep a promise. So that meant a whole lot to our community, but that's opening up other avenues. Now, like you said you would do this, and you actually did it. Mind blown. I didn't believe it. maybe I can trust you with this. Maybe I can trust you with something else. Maybe I can trust you with, so it's opening up the floodgates for other needs and other concerns. So just thank you for allowing us to be able to keep that promise. And it's just exciting to see that trust rebuild with our parents, with our students, with the staff that work in the same school, and just the community at large.
Okay. So I go to Kearney, and I haven't really seen it at Kearney yet. Feeding San Diego does not partner with Kearney High School. However, I have seen flyers at our school for mobile dental clinics and mental health programs for teens. And from what I can understand, there are students at our school who do sign up for those programs. And over the past year or 2 years, I've seen them increase. Last year, they were kind of infrequent, and I saw flyers for them at least 5 or 6 times this year. So I think Kearney is starting to get on board with these programs. I'm not sure how far we're going. My school is going to implement the programs, though.
I haven't seen it as much on the ground level as our school contacts, but I have seen just kids being excited to try new produce, and I've witnessed also just families coming together at a safe space. I've seen family members check on other family members while they're at the pantries because they become close while they're all going to the pantries at the same time. I've seen people concerned if they haven't seen a family come through just to make sure that they're okay. So I've just seen a sense of community, and what they've mentioned is just trust and just building relationships, and it becomes a social setting and not the stigma of receiving food, but just more of it's a safe social place to receive resources.
All right, anyone else coming up with the question? Great.
Thank you. I remember a while back seeing something, and I think it was in a Sunset magazine, about communities that were starting to encourage their members to use unused pieces of property of land to put fruit-bearing or vegetable plants in, that sort of thing, that was going to be open for the use of everyone in the community. And I'm wondering, not that you need more work to do, but if anybody is taking that up as a serious thing about teaching in the schools about how it is to have a plot of land and to plant seeds. I've done it in my own backyard, and I'm overwhelmed with the stuff that I get that I've been giving away. Do people in your communities have a way to give to you what their produce is? Do you on the school campuses have a place where you might be able to have a trial garden for some people, for some of your students to learn how that is, kind of along that line. By the way, I was a former counselor at Hoover High School too, so hats off to you.
All right, thank you, Maria. I'm going to actually have Sam take this first.
It's a great question. From a Feeding San Diego standpoint, we haven't in the past taken, I'll say, perishable donations, but we do work with many organizations like Produce Good, who will go out and source produce from smaller, I'll call it, family homes, which then will distribute it out to the community. It's definitely something I will bring back to leadership and learn more about to see if there's a avenue there that we can explore. So,
Yeah. I know at my school, we recently started a garden club. We haven't, this is the first year we're doing it, so we're kind of in the planning phases, but our goal is eventually to start a school garden and then reclaim school lunches that have been thrown away and that are half-eaten, and eventually recycle and put them back into the garden as compost so that we can grow food and then hand them out to students at our school.
We're going to get wrapped up here a little bit, but that's fine. Hoover has a community garden that we started, as well as City Heights. There is a City Heights community garden that exists that does that exact work. But at Hoover, we were able to fund it as part of community schools. Multiple planter beds were installed on campus. So students are learning everything from growing your own food to supply chain. It's amazing how much you can learn from food distribution, supply chain, waste, all these things that we can incorporate into the classroom and teach our students. But the garden was able to provide 100 pounds of produce this year, which we were really excited about. We're hoping to grow that number next year. But it's definitely something that there's a lot of talk around gardens. The thing that's missing around it is the T word that I was saying earlier, treasure. There's a lot of great talk about it, but not a lot of resources have been allocated to it. But it's definitely something that we want to continue to explore, definitely at Hoover High School.
Thank you. Let me go around. So this is the first year that Hamilton has also had a community garden. If anyone has been to Hamilton, it's a really beautiful location, and we're situated on the side of Swan Canyon. So we actually have a gate that opens up to the Swan Canyon walking trail so that it doesn't just benefit our families, but it can benefit anybody. It was in a place affectionately known as Jungle Hamilton, so the weeds were taller than me, and so we actually had some community cleanups, and the community came in and helped us take all the weeds down, and we built garden beds. And so Hamilton Heroes have 8 to 10 gardening and cooking lessons a year, and one of the amazing things that we've been able to do is as we get some Feeding San Diego produce that maybe people are hesitant to try, or they're not sure what to make, or we have a little bit of extra, Miss Letty, shout out to Miss Letty, who's our gardening teacher, will actually bring them in. So yams were a thing that people were like, what is this orange potato looking thing? And we actually had a feast the second to last day of school. We made 5 different types of wraps, all with yams, and that stemmed from having so many yams at a Feeding San Diego food distribution. We've gotten yams multiple times, and now they're always gone because the students go home and they want the yams because now they've learned these things to make. And I think it's also amazing because with the garden, you get to see how every culture might look at a piece of produce differently and might have a different way that they want to make it. And so it's been really cool. There was a cooking lesson where it was like, everyone's going to have the same ingredients. Go home, talk to your family, talk to your neighbors, and come back with a recipe about how you would make these things. And that's what turned into the wraps. So we do, but one plug, going back to treasures, produce, which can feel elitist and can feel very expensive, goes along with gardening, which can also be very elitist. Looking at just elementary schools, almost every garden is funded by a PTA and a PTO, where they're getting donations from their work or their families or themselves. There are organizations like Sage Garden Project that do, partner with schools, and that's great, but it takes a lot of funds to start one. So that kind of just goes back to your treasure. And then also talent. It is not easy to garden. I was the garden educator for a couple weeks at Hamilton, and it did not go very well because that's not my talent, but it's a great community. People came in again and met the need, taught us how to grow seedlings in a classroom. And I think this is that dialogue, the number one snack on my campus is hot Cheetos. Now the number one snack are these other things because there's not a fear around healthy food or produce, and you've seen the whole thing. Also, people protect the produce because they've now seen how long it takes a cucumber to grow in the garden. So when they see 300, 400 cucumbers at Feeding San Diego, there's a really big sense of gratitude because it takes a lot of love and labor for every single one of those pieces of produce. So I'm excited to see how we can continue to grow that, and it's a great idea because this is more than just feeding people. It's educating, creating empowerment, in addition to feeding people. So thank you.
It's almost the opposite of how the sausage gets made. You really want to see how the cucumber is grown. Okay, I have another question coming this way.
Question from our virtual audience, and I think this is for Sam specifically. How much do we pay for produce, or do we have to pay for produce? Or maybe it's for Patty, who's right here. Can I? Yes.
We have our Chief Supply Chain Officer here, Patty O'Connor, so give her a hand.
Hello, thank you all for coming tonight. We do actually have to pay to get the produce here. So the majority of the produce that we source for Feeding San Diego is quote unquote donated, but we do have to pay to have it picked and put in totes, and also for the freight to get it here. A lot of farms, if they can't sell a certain crop, it's actually cheaper for them just to let it rot in the farm than to pay people to pick it. And so that's where we come in and we say, no, we will pay you. And we pay on average about 16 to 20 cents a pound if we average it all out. So we're finding that it makes more sense for us to focus on produce, and I love hearing about how it's so welcome at your schools. It does make more sense financially and nutritionally to focus on produce. So we are doing that, and the majority of what we send out of our distribution center is produce.
Thanks, Patty. Yeah, I think it also comes back to a point that we just made earlier on in the panel, which is that we have enough food, right? We have enough food, but it costs money instead of letting it rot in the fields to get it to the people who need it. So that's really why we ask for your treasure and not your canned goods these days, is because we can really, for those 15 cents, get a pound that normally costs $7, right? So I really would like to impress that upon you. But I think that's the time we have for our Q&A. Can I give one more round of applause for our amazing panelists? I'm really, really grateful for everyone for taking your time to be here today. I hope you share what you learned with the people who care about you and who you care about, because that's the best way to kind of really get people in to knowing and then in on helping. So one more time, I will just tell you that every $1 that you give us is 2 meals. That's really, really great. We did 35 million meals last year. We really, really want to do more, but things are changing all the time. Food is way more expensive. Gas is way more expensive, and we as an organization aren't able to do as much with your dollars last year. So we are asking you to give more. If you are able to, so that we can help out our students. And if you have a project, like Maria, who used to work with Hoover, and you feel connected to Hoover, send me an email. I can make sure your dollars support a place that you feel connected to, right? So if there's a project that you have in mind, if I can't help you, I will connect you with somebody who can, right? We really, really care about not just what Feeding San Diego can do, but as long as our community is being served in that sense. So thank you so much to our Grove members. Thank you so much to our stakeholders. We really appreciate you coming out tonight. If you'd like to stay for the tour of the warehouse and our volunteer center, please stick around just by the door, and I will be giving that tour. Otherwise, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your Tuesday evening.